Historical accounts of USOs date back centuries, appearing in naval records, maritime logs, and traditional stories from seafaring cultures worldwide. These accounts, though varying in detail and reliability, share common descriptions of objects moving through water at impossible speeds, entering and exiting the ocean without expected physical effects, and demonstrating capabilities beyond any known technology of their time. The consistency of these reports across cultures and time periods suggests a long-term presence rather than recent phenomena. The persistence of these accounts across centuries raises profound questions about the nature of these objects. If non-human technology has been operating in our oceans for hundreds or thousands of years, the ocean depths may represent not just an occasional environment but their primary domain. Rather than visitors from elsewhere occasionally entering our oceans, these objects may be permanent residents for whom the underwater environment is home. From a strategic perspective, establishing underwater bases would be far more practical than space-based alternatives. Ocean depths provide natural radiation shielding, pressure containment, temperature regulation, and abundant resources. All factors that would require enormous technological effort to replicate in space. The energy requirements for maintaining underwater bases would be substantially lower than orbital or lunar facilities, making them more sustainable for long-term operations. The capabilities demonstrated by USOs suggest technology specifically adapted to underwater operations rather than space vehicles occasionally entering water. These capabilities appear optimized for the unique challenges and opportunities presented by Earth's oceans, indicating potential evolutionary adaptation to this environment. What makes this hypothesis particularly compelling is the pattern of encounters. These aren't random, isolated incidents but show systematic characteristics that suggest organized activity. What if the objects moving through our oceans at impossible speeds aren't just passing through? The underwater network. Evidence suggests these objects aren't random visitors but part of something more permanent and organized. The geographical distribution of USO sightings reveals striking patterns that challenge the notion of occasional transits. Instead, the data points toward a systematic presence, an organized network with permanent underwater infrastructure. Over decades, naval intelligence has documented USO encounters clustered around specific underwater locations. These aren't random distribution patterns that would indicate occasional visitors. Instead, they show repeated activity in precise areas, creating hotspots of USO observations that remain consistent over time. This geographical consistency cannot be explained by chance encounters or misidentified natural phenomena. Some of the most compelling evidence comes from sonar operators who have detected anomalous structures in deep ocean regions. These structures sometimes appear on mapping systems only to disappear during subsequent scans. Conventional underwater features, seamounts, ridges, or natural formations don't vanish from sonar. Their consistent appearance on mapping systems is one of the foundational principles of underwater navigation. Objects that appear and disappear challenge our understanding of what's actually present in these deep water environments. The disappearing structures suggest technology capable of either becoming invisible to sonar or physically relocating between mapping missions. Both possibilities imply capabilities far beyond conventional explanation. Active sonar can typically penetrate the water column to detect solid objects based on sound wave reflection. Objects that can avoid this detection while still maintaining physical presence would require either advanced cloaking technology or materials that absorb rather than reflect sonar waves. Certain oceanic regions have demonstrated significantly higher concentrations of USO activity over time. These regions often share particular characteristics. They typically feature deep underwater trenches, complex underwater terrain, or proximity to strategic human activities. The non-random distribution suggests these areas serve as operational hubs for whatever intelligence controls these objects. One pattern repeatedly documented involves objects being tracked as they emerge from specific deep underwater locations, conduct operations in shallower waters or airspace, and then return to these same deep points. Naval tracking systems have recorded these movements over decades, with objects consistently returning to the same general areas. This behavior mirrors how human submarines operate from established bases rather than how transient visitors would behave. The depth of these apparent return points often exceeds the crush depth of our most advanced submarines. Areas like the Puerto Rico Trench, Mariana Trench, and certain regions of the South China Sea show consistent USO activity emerging from depths where no human technology could establish permanent structures. The pressure at these depths would crush conventional materials, suggesting either temporary visitation or the use of materials and technology that can withstand pressures beyond our engineering capabilities. What makes these patterns particularly significant is their persistence across decades. The same underwater regions that showed unusual activity in the 1950s continue to generate similar reports today. This temporal consistency rules out temporary phenomena or one-time events. Natural explanations like underwater gas releases, seismic activity, or bioluminescent organisms would not maintain such precise geographical consistency over such extended periods. Naval intelligence analysts have reportedly mapped these patterns, creating classified charts of underwater regions with anomalous activity. These charts allegedly show network-like connections between hotspots, suggesting coordinated movement between established locations rather than random appearances. The structured nature of these movements often forms precise patterns that natural phenomena wouldn't create. Some of the most compelling cases involve multiple objects operating in apparent coordination. Rather than single USOs, naval sensors have occasionally detected formations of objects moving in precise patterns that suggest organized operations. These formations sometimes maintain perfect geometric arrangements even while moving at high speeds through water, behavior that indicates intelligent control rather than natural phenomena. The underwater regions with highest USO activity often connect to areas of significant military or technological importance. Underwater communication cable routes, nuclear submarine bases, and major naval facilities frequently report unusually high incidences of unexplained underwater objects. This correlation suggests intentional monitoring rather than coincidental presence. Military personnel who have tracked these objects report behavior consistent with reconnaissance operations. The objects appear to observe human activities, sometimes maintaining position near naval exercises or underwater infrastructure before departing. This behavior suggests purposeful information gathering rather than random movement. Some of the most sensitive USO data involves underwater listening posts detecting acoustic signatures that don't match any known submarine or marine animal. These acoustic signatures sometimes remain stationary for weeks or months before moving, suggesting long-term positioning in specific underwater locations. The sounds don't propagate like known mechanical or biological sources, indicating fundamentally different generation mechanisms. The systematic nature of USO movements often displays what analysts describe as patrol patterns, regular routes revisited with timing too precise to be accidental. These patterns sometimes correlate with human naval operations, changing in response to our underwater activities. This responsive behavior strongly indicates intelligence rather than natural phenomena or misidentified conventional objects. The evidence points to a permanent presence rather than occasional visitations. The geographical consistency, the return to specific locations, the coordinated movements between established points, and the long-term persistence of these patterns collectively suggest something that has established itself in our oceans rather than merely passing through. This has profound implications for how we understand the UFO phenomenon. If what we're observing isn't random appearances but an organized network operating continuously in our oceans, we must reconsider fundamental assumptions about the nature and origin of these objects. The systematic nature of USO activity suggests organized operations that have been ongoing for decades or longer. Operations conducted with purpose and intelligence. As scientific inquiry continues, we need to focus our attention not just on the skies above but on the vast, unexplored depths below. Our oceans may be the key to unlocking this mystery. Consider subscribing for expert analysis on classified encounters and the latest developments in this field. The existence of such an underwater network raises critical questions about security and sovereignty in our oceans, questions that have defined military power throughout human history. The national security implications. Military strategists have long understood that technological superiority in the oceans translates directly to global power. Naval dominance has defined military power for centuries. Control of the seas has determined the outcome of major conflicts, facilitated global trade, and established geopolitical hierarchies. Nations have invested trillions in building naval forces capable of projecting power and protecting maritime interests. The United States Navy, with its aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and advanced weapons systems, exemplifies this commitment to oceanic superiority. This naval strategy assumes that we understand and can counter any threat that might emerge from the seas. USOs fundamentally challenge that assumption. The objects described by Elizondo and others demonstrate capabilities that make our most advanced naval defenses potentially obsolete. When objects can travel underwater at 450 to 550 knots, more than twice as fast as our fastest torpedoes, the strategic calculus changes dramatically. This speed disparity isn't a minor technical advantage but a complete paradigm shift in what's possible in the underwater domain. Consider the tactical implications. Naval warfare relies on the ability to detect, track, and intercept potential threats. Our current sensor systems, primarily sonar-based, function on principles of sound propagation through water. Yet USOs reportedly operate with minimal acoustic signatures, despite their high speeds. This suggests either materials or propulsion systems that don't create the expected sound profiles, potentially rendering them invisible to conventional detection methods. The speed differential creates an insurmountable tactical problem. Even if our systems could detect these objects, we have no weapons capable of intercepting something moving at 550 knots underwater. Our fastest torpedoes would be hopelessly outpaced. This speed advantage means USOs could approach any naval asset, including aircraft carriers or ballistic missile submarines, with impunity. The defense systems designed to protect these assets operate on assumptions about maximum approach speeds that USOs completely invalidate. Depth capabilities present another significant vulnerability. Our most advanced submarines operate within specific depth parameters due to hull pressure limitations. The deepest diving combat submarines can reach approximately 1,600 feet. Beyond these depths, the crushing pressure makes operation impossible with current materials and designs. Yet USOs have been tracked operating at much greater depths, accessing regions of the ocean that remain completely beyond our reach. This depth advantage provides them with sanctuaries completely inaccessible to our forces. They can retreat to regions where we cannot follow, making pursuit or interception impossible. This capability negates the traditional undersea warfare advantage submarines have provided, the ability to hide beneath the thermocline layer and use deep waters as concealment. Perhaps most concerning is the transmedium capability demonstrated by these objects. Our defense systems are environment-specific. Air defense systems target aerial threats. Naval defenses counter surface and subsurface threats. This separation creates inherent vulnerabilities at the boundaries between domains. Objects that can move seamlessly between water and air exploit these boundaries, potentially transitioning between domains to avoid detection or interception. This transmedium capability means an object could approach underwater, where sonar detection is limited to relatively short ranges, then suddenly emerge into air to complete an approach. Current defense systems aren't designed to maintain tracking across this medium transition, creating a critical vulnerability in our integrated air and naval defense architecture. The apparent surveillance interest these objects show in our military activities raises additional concerns. Multiple encounters have occurred near military exercises, nuclear facilities, and naval bases. This pattern suggests deliberate observation of our capabilities, tactics, and technological systems. This isn't random presence but appears to be intentional monitoring of our most sensitive operations and installations. According to Luis Elizondo, the U.S. government has documented UAP encounters with alarming frequency near nuclear assets. In one notable instance from 1967, a UFO seemingly disabled nuclear-armed missiles at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. This pattern suggests that USOs may be deliberately surveilling sensitive military installations, potentially to assess or even compromise critical national security infrastructure. The technology gap between these objects and our most advanced systems is so vast that developing effective countermeasures may be impossible with current capabilities. We cannot outrun them, hide from them, or intercept them with existing systems. This asymmetric advantage renders traditional deterrence concepts potentially irrelevant. How do you deter something you cannot credibly threaten? Elizondo has stated that the U.S. government is engaged in a secretive arms race to reverse engineer UAP technologies. He also indicated that advanced technologies not made by the U.S. government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. This implies a potential threat from unknown actors with superior technological capabilities. The national security establishment's response to these encounters appears fragmented. Journalist Michael Schellenberger testified that elements within the military and intelligence community may be violating their constitutional duty to inform Congress of their operations regarding UAPs. He also mentioned a secret program called Immaculate Constellation that allegedly collects UFO and UAP reports from military personnel and sensor data, then sequesters them from the rest of the government and military. This information compartmentalization undermines coordinated response capabilities. If different agencies and military branches aren't sharing encounter data, developing comprehensive threat assessments becomes impossible. The lack of transparent information sharing suggests either institutional dysfunction or deliberate information control for purposes not publicly acknowledged. USOs represent a paradigm shift in how we must think about oceanic security and sovereignty. Traditional concepts of territorial waters and exclusive economic zones assume the ability to monitor and control access to these regions. Objects that can move with impunity throughout our waters, at speeds we cannot match and depths we cannot reach, fundamentally challenge these sovereignty concepts. The implications extend beyond military concerns to broader national security questions. If these objects represent technology from an unknown intelligence, their interest in our nuclear and military capabilities may indicate strategic assessment. Their technological superiority creates a fundamental vulnerability that cannot be addressed through conventional military means. This forces a reassessment of security paradigms built on assumptions of technological parity or superiority. As we confront the reality of these underwater phenomena, we must look beyond traditional security frameworks to understand what their presence might mean. The underwater dimension of the UFO phenomenon may hold answers that have eluded us in our study of aerial encounters alone. Looking deeper into these underwater mysteries reveals a critical path forward. The evidence Elizondo presents demands serious scientific and security consideration beyond the constraints of traditional thinking. The capabilities demonstrated by USOs, 450 to 550 knot speeds without cavitation, seamless medium transitions, and perfect control, reveal technology operating according to principles that challenge our fundamental understanding of physics. These oceanic encounters provide concrete, sensor-recorded evidence that may ultimately help us understand their origin, technological principles, and purpose. As former Pentagon officials continue sharing their experiences, the classified barriers surrounding USOs gradually become more transparent. Each new revelation brings us closer to comprehending the true nature of these mysterious craft operating beneath our oceans and their profound implications for humanity's understanding of technology and potentially our place in the universe.